Good evening, everyone. If I start speaking too quickly, please let me know, all right? So that you understand clearly. Do you understand me well? Well, the idea today is for us to talk about this film, which is already quite old. It's nothing new. The film The Matrix was made in 1999, an American production from 1999. I find it interesting for us to pause and reflect on this because it's really not that long ago. It's been 17 years. But do you remember how the characters would transfer from one world to another? In a phone booth. Do you see phone booths around these days? It's something very rare, isn't it? The screen that was used, well, it would be much easier to access the Matrix today. The screen they used all the time, Neo's computer screen, was a DOS screen with those green lines. In other words, technology has advanced so quickly that when we look at that now, it already seems almost prehistoric, doesn't it? The younger generation doesn't even know what a DOS screen is. You, the younger ones, may have never even seen it, right? But the message is interesting because young people today still watch this film, are still surprised by it, and still enjoy it. There is still a legion of people passionate about the movie The Matrix. This is typical of something that conveys something more, that carries a symbolic message. And when it's just a passing trend, after all these years, no one would remember anything about it. And this is a film, just a moment ago I was mentioning, that I was curious to know where these two brothers, Larry and Andy Wachowski, drew their inspiration from, what they read in order to create the script for this movie, which contains classic symbolic references of every kind. The film is almost entirely symbolic, the first one. The sequels, not so much, but the first is basically all symbolic. And the idea is that we pull on a few threads so you can understand what lies behind the scenes of The Matrix from a philosophical perspective. All right? So let's go ahead and talk a bit about this. As I was telling you, there are some mythical themes that are deeply explored, which address certain essential questions of human life. The Matrix deals with the theme of the hero's myth. The hero's myth is about that being who has overcome all difficulties, who has managed to achieve their goal, whether it is to rescue the princess from the castle, slay the dragon, or whatever it may be, and has reached a certain level. He marries the princess and reigns. All of this is symbolic. In general, it means marrying one's own awakened soul. Usually, it is about attaining a higher level of consciousness. The Matrix addresses the myth of the hero. If you look, for example, at other films that are also worth analyzing, perhaps one day we will discuss them as well, such as The Phantom of the Opera. The myth of the mask is also one of the oldest there is. It is very interesting, relating to certain realities of the human psyche. So, myth always appeals to us because it is a formula that, even if you do not fully understand it rationally, it suggests something profound to you, it leaves a mark, as if you had absorbed some lesson, even if you are not entirely conscious of it. All right? So, it is as if you imagine what I have described. The recurrence of mythical themes. I know what to say, I adapt it to new languages. If you consider what would be fundamental from the perspective of traditional philosophy, what we should convey to a human being, there really aren't that many topics. How does one discover the meaning of human life? How does one overcome the obstacles along the way? How does one overcome alienation from their environment? How does one balance living together with respect for oneself and respect for others? With just half a dozen themes, you would cover the most important things a person needs to know. Then you simply dress it in Greek clothing, or Roman clothing, or attire from the 20th or 21st century. So, if you look behind certain myths, such as Plato's Allegory of the Cave, which is the clearest reference this film makes, the underlying idea remains the same. But simply, they relied on modern language. The Phantom of the Opera is very similar. The language is the same as that of Greek theater in terms of content, but they adapted it with a 19th century face, since the novel by Gaston Leroux was written in the 19th century. But the same essence remains, simply adapted to a language that makes it easier for people to understand. That is exactly it, and this should always be done. I always joke when I give my lectures that sometimes, when we want to talk about certain fundamental things in human life, we have to use symbols borrowed from the past, because we haven't created our own symbols and our own myths. So, when you go to a court of law, how do they represent the goddess of justice? Themis, a Greek goddess. Well, we invented the jet airplane. Why haven't we invented a vision of justice dressed in the 21st century? It would be easier for people to understand. Love is the same way. Either you use Venus, Aphrodite, or you use the little heart, which is more associated with passion than with love. In other words, we lack symbols, modern myths, a contemporary attire for timeless truths, don't we? And this film, in that sense, is very successful. Well, the myth I was telling you about is not the only one. In fact, I have even given a lecture here about the same myth as seen, for example, in Japan, which is the parable of the 10 bulls. The story is very interesting. It is the myth of the cave in the Zen tradition. You will see the myth of the cave within the Egyptian tarot. You will find the myth of the cave in various traditions. The myth of the cave speaks of humanity leaving the illusory world and moving toward the real world. And the illusory world is the one made up of matter. For them, there is a criterion in all these civilizations, from India, which called this Maya, illusion, that the material world is not real because it does not endure. It dissolves in your hands. Nothing here is lasting. When you think something belongs to you, it disappears, it ceases to exist. It is paradoxical. You may have experienced this, losing a loved one or a dear friend, and you look at that lifeless body and ask, where is the intelligence, the imagination, the love, the affection, all the life that was inside, where did it go? How can things simply cease to be? How can something real simply cease to exist? Isn't that intriguing? This is one of humanity's oldest sources of unease. How do things disappear? Where do they go? Because if they vanish, perhaps they never truly existed, or perhaps they have only disappeared from my sight, but continue to exist somewhere else. This doubt about what reality truly is. I will not go into very deep details with you about the allegory of the cave. There is a lecture about this on our YouTube channel, which is very interesting if you want to learn more deeply, but basically it is part of a book by Plato, the Greek philosopher. Chapter 7 of the book The Republic, where he asks you to imagine a scene like this, an underground cave, where there are prisoners looking at a wall. And here, a wall of people pass by carrying objects, carrying various shapes, and these shadows are cast here by the effect of this fire. And these men who are chained here only see the shadows, and they believe those shadows are real. Because of an echo effect, when these people speak, the sound bounces here. They believe that it is the shadows that are speaking. They know nothing of reality. Until one day, one of these people begins to stir within the cave, feeling anguish, feeling unhappy. Without knowing it rationally, this person begins to sense that life is not just that. This is what Plato called the birth of philosophy, the exhaustion of mere appearances as the meaning of life, the exhaustion of mere survival as the purpose of existence. Human beings have a need for wisdom, for values, for depth, to know themselves and to understand the world. So, when this is born within, this person begins to stir. One day, he breaks these chains and moves to the back of the cave. Imagine the shock of a person who has spent their entire life seeing only this, when they come to the back and discover that it was all a lie, an illusory effect caused by this fire. And then he decides to leave, because he sees the sunlight outside. He thinks, well, that intense light out there must be an even greater reality than this one. Now that I have started, I will go all the way. I want to reach it. And he faces a difficult climb, because this man is only used to sitting his whole life. He has no muscle strength, and he cannot even see well when the light is strong. His eyes are only accustomed to the shadows. So he endures a very difficult climb, but when he finally reaches the outside, he feels free, fulfilled, and happy. He sees things illuminated by the sunlight, he sees the truth, he sees the real world. And then, moved by compassion, he feels pity for the men who remained inside and returns out of empathy. For Plato, this is the cycle of human experience, to seek one's own liberation and then to uplift humanity, to bring humanity along with you. So basically, this myth has had many representations, including in other films. The movie The Matrix very clearly illustrates this idea. I often say that the most important point to understand in the allegory of the cave is precisely this matrix, not the matrix, but a small framework I call the criterion of reality. Try to imagine the following. If you take a contemporary society and ask people, what is the real world? Is it the spiritual world or the material world? These people will say, nowadays, no, it's the material world. That's what we see. The spiritual world, people talk about it, but no one has proven it. No one has any proof that it exists. It's a theory, a fiction, some even say it's a lie. Isn't that so? The real world is the material world. How do people assess reality in a society like ours, which is fundamentally materialistic? They judge by the senses. The current criterion for reality is the senses. Things are tangible, visible, audible, they are real. The criterion of the senses is what gives things their reality. The spiritual world, no one touches it, no one sees it. So, it becomes a theory, a hypothesis, a utopia, right? Well, if you take an ancient society, let's say, at the height of India or Egypt, go to Thebes, or even the Minoan or Mycenaean world, the Greek world, wherever you wish to travel in antiquity, and you take any man, an average man, and ask him, what is real? What is real to you? The spiritual or the material? He will tell you calmly, because that was the culture. The spiritual is real. The material is an illusion. Why is that? Do you know why? Because the material passes away. It is impermanent. When you think you have something, you actually have nothing. Not even this here belongs to you. Nothing that is truly yours can ever be taken from you. Everything that can be taken from you is illusory. This, at some point, we will have to return. It belongs to nature, and nature will recycle it, will transform it into something else. In other words, for them, the criterion for reality is eternity. For something to be real, it had to be eternal. If it is fleeting, illusory, it is a play of shadows. A shadow is like this. It is cast on the wall, and it appears. If I remove the object, it disappears. It has no reality. It vanishes and appears out of nowhere, because it is not real. So, this was a classical criterion for reality. The myth of the cave tells us this. As long as a person lives according to shadows, they will remain a superficial human being. They may find happiness, but they will not find their own identity. When one seeks to find what is real, what endures within oneself, what endures within each thing, one fulfills oneself as a human being. They reach a level of consciousness that was called wisdom. Philosophy is the love of wisdom. This kind of wisdom. Do you understand this? If you imagine a scene from your childhood, a scene from your adolescence, a scene from a recent moment in your life, you will notice that all the circumstances change. When we are children, we think everything is big. We have a different emotional perception of things. Adolescence is the same, and in this more recent time, yet another perception. But you notice that there is something deep inside, the eyes that see the world, and they are the same. We no longer think as we did when we were 7 years old. We no longer feel as we once did. But essentially, this eye that watches the movie of life unfold before our eyes is the same. This profound identity is said to be permanent. And this illusory world is as if it were a film passing before our eyes. It is not real. And what was it made for? So that you may see through it. It is all symbolic. So that you may decode what it is trying to tell you through a language. I am putting together phonemes, and you are understanding what I want to say through these sounds. For, I don't know, for someone who doesn't speak my language, it would make no sense at all. So, this world of shadows would be a language, the language of the soul, as Jung used to say. Through it, you must learn to reach something. So, this is the main myth to which this film refers. And we will see a bit of what it says about this. The very name matrix, or matrix, as some prefer to call it, right? Comes from womb. The word matrix in Latin meant womb, which comes from mater, mother. It is this earthly world that gives birth to our bodies, that momentarily lends us this little biological robot so that we may come and live an experience. But when we identify with this little biological robot, we stop having an experience of the world and become prisoners of the world. Instead of learning from the world, we become its prisoners. It's like having a vehicle parked outside. It is wonderful. But do you know who it is and who you are? The purpose of your life is not to keep your vehicle new, but to make your vehicle useful to you, so that it takes you to the places you need to go. Isn't that right? This here is also a vehicle. It should be useful to an inner user. It should take us to the places we need to go, show us the things we need to learn, but not have us live just pampering a vehicle. It has no meaning if you never take it out of the garage because you don't want to wear it out. What is the purpose of a vehicle like that? A vehicle that doesn't take you anywhere. So you need to have an idea of both the driver and the vehicle. This vehicle was lent to us by this matter, this matrix, which gave it to us so that we could live an experience, not to imprison us. Ooh. So another curious thing, at the time it was really trendy. Didn't you ever buy those Matrix sunglasses? No, everyone bought them. They must have sold by the dozen. Those dark glasses, that black outfit, are actually symbolic as well. The color black, as you know, does not reflect light when it comes to clothing. So, the lights of the illusory world of the Matrix are not multiplied, they are not reflected. There is a very ancient book from the Finnish tradition, Finnish lore, which says that their hero was a diamond. Because a diamond is a being that reflects the light around it many times over. Whereas the color black absorbs the light and does not reflect it. It is as if you do not wish to pass on the lights of an illusory world. So you absorb them and do not reflect them. And also the glasses, so that you are not deceived by the lights of the matrix of the illusory world. So it is as if they were special beings who no longer allowed themselves to be deceived, who no longer reproduced or carried these illusions forward, who did not let themselves be blinded by them, whose eyes were protected from the lights of the illusory world, from the lights of the bonfire. So this is the first symbol they used, which later became fashionable. And what about our hero in this story? Neo. The name is quite clear, isn't it? It means new or renewed. The idea of the hero is a new man, who breaks away from the pattern of the masses, who sees what no one else had seen, who goes against the current, who is able to be true to himself and not to the collective unconscious, who is not massified. And also, if you rearrange the letters of this short name, it becomes one. The main one, the chosen one. Throughout the entire film, he is called the chosen one, the only one, the one who came to break a pattern of behavior, to show what humanity is capable of. So, from the very beginning, we already know that this character has an important role in the story. His very name, Thomas, etymologically means the one who is prepared to see. And Anderson, the son of courage. In other words, he is a man who seeks to see reality and has the courage to do so. He is exhausted from merely surviving. Sooner or later, he will establish contact with those who have already seen something and who will recognize his restlessness. There is a very interesting tradition, the Tibetan tradition, in which some of those Tibetan lamas would say, when there is a man, the world is like a great black fabric. When there is a man anywhere on earth seeking wisdom, he shines for us like a light burning in the dark night. We see, anywhere in the world, a person who is weary of living out resolutions and who longs for something more. Because they shine, they radiate their own light, no longer merely reflecting the light that comes from outside. Do you see? They are a star, already possessing their own light, and they begin to be noticeable. So, within the matrix, they are found by those who have already freed themselves, who have already discovered the way out of that game of illusions. Do you remember that scene from his computer while he was sleeping? Wake up, Neo. Follow the white rabbit. Get out, wake up, awaken. Follow the white rabbit. What does the white rabbit remind you of? Alice in Wonderland. The rabbit is a communicator between two worlds, isn't it? It creates a bridge, it is a pontiff. It takes Alice to another dimension. And so, it is also a symbol. The rabbit is going to take you to another dimension. It will lead you out of there. He was an electronic pirate, a kind of hacker, right? someone capable of breaking into programs, deciphering codes and messages. In other words, he wanted to know what was behind appearances. He was curious. He knew there was something wrong with the game of appearances in the world. A film very similar to this, which you may have seen, is The Truman Show. It has this as well. He starts to notice that everything there is very rehearsed. There is something strange that is not spontaneous. There is something behind the scenes of life. Who among us has not, at some point, felt this curiosity? Plato stated emphatically, if you have ever felt this curiosity, you are a philosopher in potential. Right? What is behind the scenes of life? It can't be possible. There are certain things that seem to come exactly at the moment I need to hear them. It feels as if someone behind the scenes of life is trying to tell me something and uses the symbols of my life to communicate. Don't you feel that way? There is an example I often use in my lectures, which is the most pedagogical one I have found. It's that moment when you get in a line, and your line is the slowest one at the bank, in traffic, everywhere. Then you switch lines, and the one you were in starts moving, while the one you just joined comes to a halt. Have you ever stopped to think that life might be telling you that perhaps you need to have more patience? Maybe you need to control your anxiety. Perhaps it's telling you that you need to lessen your sense of self-importance, that belief that no one else should move forward but you. There is something behind that, especially if it is a recurring experience. And if you change your pattern of response to life, that experience stops repeating itself. Sometimes we notice this more in others than in ourselves. Don't you notice that there are people who have repetitive experiences in life? Sometimes they are always getting involved with people of questionable character and end up getting hurt and suffering. You look and say, the person feels like a victim. You look and say, well, it's like they have a billboard on their forehead saying, criminals, come here. Either they are naive or there is something they still need to learn from this experience. Those on the outside sometimes notice repetitive patterns better than we do ourselves. Repetitive patterns are life repeating the same lesson for you, placing this message in different envelopes, but always with the same content. Different situations in life conveying the same message. Life is behind the scenes, trying to speak to you, trying to communicate with you. So, he suspected there was a mystery in life, something happening behind the scenes he was thirsty for understanding. This is fundamental. Later on, this will be shown the necessity of taking initiative. He wanted to discover the truth. He has to make a choice. He must choose the right pill, the red or the blue one, remember? He has to make the choice. He must take the first step. Well, then this character enters the story, the first to make contact with him, Trinity. A reference to the Trinity. Her love for Neo accompanies him throughout his entire journey. So, notice that Trinity, the idea of the Trinity connected to the human essence, is one of the oldest concepts in the world. We will talk about this a little further on. Ancient traditions associated the number 3, the triangle, and geometric and numerical forms related to 3 with the essence of humanity, while the number 4 was associated with the personality, that is, the physical, energetic, emotional, and practical mental aspects of a person. This denser, more concrete part is what interacts with the world. And above it, there is an essence, as if it were the driver guiding this vehicle. This 3 plus 4 was what, for example, India called the septenary constitution. The essence and the appearance. The driver and the vehicle. So, the Trinity, look at the religions, and you will see. Christianity, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Egyptian religion, Isis, Osiris, and Horus. The Indian Trimurti, Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. Achaemenid Persia, Ormuz, Mar, Damitra. The Trinity in religions and philosophies is very common. It is associated with the idea of human essence. But what does it say? Did Pythagoras speak of this? That the essence, the symbol of human essence, which is the divine within us, the divine in the universe, is the one. The number 1 was considered the sacred par excellence. When the one wishes to come into the world, it must generate a 3-dimensional object. The smallest 3-dimensional object you can create is a tetrahedron, which is a small pyramid with a triangular base. Isn't that so? For the one to generate an object, it must generate the three. For it to become three-dimensional, the name itself says try, it must generate the three. And so Plato said that these were the three fundamental virtues from which all others arise: will, love, and intelligence. Right? Will, love, and intelligence are the first interface between our essence and the world. So every time reference is made to the sacred, it is about the Trimurti, the Trinity of three. Trinity is the triad. It is the first time it comes into contact with its own essence. It begins to draw him outward. You will see this within a very famous Greek myth, which is Theseus and the Minotaur. Theseus only escapes from the labyrinth because there is a trinity, which is Ariadne, who gives him the thread. Otherwise, he might have been able to slay the Minotaur, but he would never have found his way out. The labyrinth was made so that no one could escape. It is the trinity of this myth, which is Ariadne, who gives the thread so that he may find his way out, and her name comes from Arios, meaning nobility, virtue, purity. She gives him the thread so that he can escape. So this trinity is like Ariadne, and later you will see, another character will appear to complete this trinity, which is Morpheus. Yes, you will see this present in many things. There is an ancient Egyptian book called the Kybalion, which speaks about the principle of neutralization. Imagine you have two children fighting over a teddy bear. You can only reconcile this fight if you are more mature and do not desire the teddy bear yourself, because if you also want it, you will just be a third person fighting for the teddy bear. In other words, if you are an adult, a mature person, you can mediate and reconcile. If you are on the same level, you cannot. Then you form a triangle. The dualities of the world are reconciled when you have a higher vantage point. The idea of the Trinity appears in many symbols. Well, we could stay here all night. In fact, you could give an entire lecture just on this topic. Now, we come to our dear Morpheus, who represents the figure of the Master. If you are curious to watch later, there is a recorded lecture called The Symbolism of Fairy Tales, and you will see that this is fundamental. It is the master in the story of fairy tales, that old man to whom the prince offers a little water, and in return, he gives the prince a cloak that makes him invisible. He gives a secret to defeat the dragon. He is the master, the one who guides. Morpheus, this name comes from Greek mythology. They drew heavily from Greek mythology, and he was a character associated with sleep. Thanatos and Morpheus, who often walked together, Morpheus was associated with sleep in the night, that is, with mystery. Morpheus would touch beings with a red poppy, and when he touched someone, he would make them fall asleep and pass into another dimension, a dream dimension, but in truth, one more real than this one. And in this dimension, he would take on human form and speak with people, revealing truths. So he is a god, as they say, a psychopomp, a funny name, isn't it? Psychopomp means pontiff, a bridge maker between two worlds. Anubis, in Egypt, was also like this. He draws people into another dimension, and it was a red poppy. In the film, he offers a red pill and a blue pill. It's interesting. It's a symbolism, in fact. I recently watched another film that used this same symbolism, which is that one about Walter Mitty. I don't know if you've seen it, where he has to choose between a red car and a blue one, and he chooses the red one and begins to live these fantastic adventures that lead him to discover himself. Interesting. There are also some interesting elements in the film. Well, so he represents this master who touches Neo with the red poppy, causing him to cross into another dimension, allowing him to see a reality beyond the illusion of the Matrix. And then the three of them together form the Trinity, right? The number 3 resolves the impasse of the number 2, as you mentioned, according to the Pythagoreans, and transforms dualism into harmony and unity. Neo, Trinity, and Morpheus are the Trinity. I mentioned to you that the triangle is a symbol you will see in India. In plane geometry, it is a triangle. In Egypt, in spatial geometry, it is the pyramid. Among the Celts, it is the cone, from Cornwall, where King Arthur was born, the King Arthur. Where the cornucopiate is found at the end of the rainbow, it is the horn, it is the cone, which always represents this number 3 in the spatial world. Whereas the number 4 of personality, if you break it down, forms a cross, doesn't it? A Christian cross represents the material world in which human beings are bound. So, with this 3, when you have the 3, you already have the possibility to break free from the matrix, because you possess will, love, and intelligence. You have the 3 attributes, and the 3 will work together to help liberate Neo and enable him to fulfill his role, because he will have a decisive part in the story. What Neo did, no one had ever done before. We will see. And then, there is this phrase, which is very beautiful, isn't it? The Matrix is everywhere, all around us. Even now, in this very room, you can see it when you look out the window or when you turn on the television. It is the world that has been pulled over your eyes to keep you from seeing the truth, to keep you from seeing reality. Indeed, you are constantly faced with distractions, constantly experiencing alienation. Plato spoke about this in the Allegory of the cave. The shadows are always shifting, because whenever a person is about to exhaust and create something more, a new shadow appears. He says, maybe what I'm really longing for is that thing over there? Then he chases after it. There are always illusory shadows, the new object you don't have, the status you haven't yet achieved, the new clothes, the new car, the new computer. This gives rise to a phenomenon we call fashion, which is cyclical. It turns and repeats itself every so often. I always remember a rather elderly student I once had, who one day came to school and said, "Look, you won't believe what I found." Today I saw a young woman on the street, wearing clothes identical to what my first girlfriend wore on our very first date. A fully pleated skirt and knee-high socks. I said, well, you've lived long enough to see the same scene twice, because fashion doesn't have that much imagination. Every now and then, it cycles back and repeats the same styles. This generates anxiety. It creates desire. And when you're caught up in that, you forget what you truly came into this world to do. We came here to discover who we are, to draw closer to that ideal, and to help others grow through our example. Humanity is here to seek values, virtues, and wisdom. But we become deceived by appearances, and as time goes by, life passes us by. I remember, and I always mention this because I find it quite amusing, a time when I didn't live in Brasilia. I lived in Paraíba, where I was involved with New Acropolis, and I would travel to Brasilia. As I passed through the airport, I saw a huge billboard from a car dealership displaying an empty garage. And underneath, there was a phrase that read, "We know how to fill that emptiness inside you." This is the height of manipulating human anguish. We know how to fill your inner emptiness at a car dealership. So, this manipulation of appearances is meant to distract people so that they do not find true light. He says, well, this is everywhere. It is what has been placed before your eyes, so that you see only this and not through it. Do not look behind. Do not seek what is backstage. Stay entertained by the spectacle on the stage. The materialistic alienations, the alienations of shadows, right? Artificial intelligence, do you remember, more or less, how the story went? That humans fought with machines. It was a fiction they created. And then, in order to destroy the machines, humans found a way to create a heavy cloud that blocked out the sun, because that would cut off the energy that powered the machines. And then the machines discovered that humans were excellent biological batteries. Since they no longer had solar energy, they began to use humans as batteries. And so they created the capsules, and from then on, people remained inside an illusory world, providing their energy to the machines. This is more or less the plot of the movie. You remember this, right? So, this artificial intelligence generates an entire race of machines or mechanized beings. Understand that the artificial intelligence and the machines, which he is symbolically referring to, are ourselves, our own mechanization, our materialism. When we become programmed machines, we simply run the software called life. We are born, we grow, we develop, we reproduce, we die. We are born, we grow, we develop, we reproduce, we die. A software. We do not possess much originality, much that is truly our own. We are an enigma to ourselves. This machine, this artificial intelligence, is our own intelligence, in quotation marks, when it becomes merely utilitarian reason, one that uses the world but does not understand it. It only has know-how. It knows how to do things. It does not know for what purpose, nor why, nor where it is headed. This mechanical way of being is what has drained the life from us. It has taken our vital energy, using it solely for mere survival. The materialism that humanity itself has created. Artificial intelligence is a symbol of our own artificiality, of our own superficiality. Humankind has polluted the sky and become a slave to machines. Only the warmth of the central sun, which is the city of Zion, can keep us awake. Do you remember there was a character, I can't quite recall the name, perhaps Tank, or something like that, who was a young man born in Zion? Zion, Mount Zion, is the place where Solomon's temple once stood, the last stronghold of wisdom. It recalls the island of Philae in Egypt, the last bastion of wisdom. Solomon represents wisdom. This city of Zion, this young man said, was located near the magnetic center of the earth. In other words, it was nourished by the energy of the earth. It is the symbolism of the center. In truth, you are seeking your own center, your own essence, aren't you? The energy that comes from the sun, which exists within you. This triad, this trinity, that which you truly are. As you approach this, you will notice that every person in history who possesses individuality and wisdom is not a product of their environment. Rather, they are a creator of their environment. They change history. Instead of being shaped by their surroundings, they shape their surroundings. They are capable of being endowed with an energy that flows from within outward, of being the architect of themselves, building their own being. All right? So, this Zion represents the center which exists within the human being himself. You will notice that this idea of a city that is hidden underground strongly resembles the cave. In Greece, caves in general were transformed into temples across various traditions. Delphi, which was the oracle of the god Apollo spoke through vapors that emerged from a cave, and the Sibyl, the prophetess, would interpret them. The cave as an initiatic center, as a place for the pursuit of wisdom. To descend into the cave was like descending into one's own inner self and then being reborn, purified. This myth appears in many traditions. The sacred cave. Thus, the city of Zion represents the group of people who still maintain some connection with themselves, some sense of identity, an inner center. They know who they are, they retain some memory, they have not been deceived by appearances, they are not superficial, and they remain closer to the center. Even Jung speaks about this idea. Imagine a circumference, with those who are closer to the center being more conscious, and those who are on the surface being mere playthings in the hands of circumstances, products of their environment. And then, Neo is going to offer him a choice, isn't he? The red pill or the blue pill? Have you ever had a dream that felt real? And if you couldn't wake up from that dream, how would you tell the difference between the dream world and the real world? Even those dreams we have at night, what we call dream consciousness. Sometimes, when you have a very vivid dream that feels incredibly real, how can I know what is real, whether it is there or here? What proof do we have that this is reality? When we speak of our dreams as ideals, a world where there is more fraternity, more justice, could it be that this world is more real than the one we live in? Could it be that this one is the illusion? Plato spoke about this. Imagine the ideal world and consider yourself a citizen of it, because it is more real than the one in which you live. Here, beings do not know what they are. Here, they live half asleep, which is also a symbol very present in fairy tales, isn't it? It is Sleeping Beauty whose consciousness, her trinity, her spiritual awareness, comes to awaken her. Right? It is the human soul asleep within matter. So, he says, are you sure that what you are living is real? Neo was not. He already had this doubt, and because of that, he was able to be rescued. Because those who are certain that life is only this cannot be rescued. Have you ever stopped to think that restlessness is the greatest gift we have? To have doubts, to want to understand things more deeply, to not believe everything we are told as if it were a ready-made truth. This need to seek answers. If you do not have it, no one can give it to you. I always tell a story in my lectures about the philosopher Socrates, which perhaps you already know, that Socrates was the son of a midwife, a very humble woman named Phaenarete. And one day someone asked him, Socrates, you were such a great philosopher. If I put an Athenian politician or any ordinary person with no wisdom at all in this chair and have you talk to him for 2 hours, when we let him go, will he become a wise man? Then Socrates replied, "Look, my mother is a midwife, and she is a very good midwife. But there is one thing she could never do, and that is to deliver a woman who is not pregnant. Do you understand? The pregnancy of wisdom is a restlessness that vibrates within you. Neo had that. If he hadn't, neither Morpheus nor Trinity could have done anything for him. He was restless, and that's why they appeared to him. That's why they saw his light shining within the matrix. They went there and made contact. He began to shine because of his restlessness. While restlessness is often seen in today's world as a form of maladjustment, in the philosophical world, it is the birth of philosophy, the birth of human consciousness. Well, this is another passage that I find very beautiful, and it's actually a phrase from a writer whose work was used in the film. A writer named Jean Baudrillard. He says, "Welcome to the desert of the real. Now it is time to build in reality and to liberate others." Imagine for you to understand this phrase. If I were to start talking to you about the classical definitions of love, what did Plato say about love? What did Aristotle say? What did Kant say? If we start to define and discuss a little more about love, do you know what conclusion we would reach? That this kind of feeling they talk about, we have never really experienced in our lives, or only very little, almost nothing at all. We hardly know what love truly is. That is a desert, isn't it? All of a sudden, my whole life collapsed. All right, but now it is a real desert. Now I can begin to build real things, because until now I was living with illusions. A multitude of castles erected, passions, needs, selfishness. Well, I thought my world was fully built, but it wasn't. Now I am in a real world. It is a desert, but it is a tangible desert. I have only one brick, but it is a real brick. From here, I can start to build real things. The philosopher is not afraid of facing reality. This is a distinctive trait of the philosopher. He is not afraid to acknowledge that he is in a desert. A good moment. Let us roll up our sleeves and begin to build real things. Now I have left behind illusion, and therefore it is worthwhile to build. All right, so welcome to the desert of the real. Now, outside the capsule, let us build true things and bring others out as well, which is the very principle of philosophy. The Zen tradition has a very beautiful saying. In fact, they say, go together, beyond the beyond, until the ultimate realization. In other words, go further, seek the ultimate realization, but do so together. Strive to bring humanity with you, for the distinctive trait of humankind is fraternity, not wanting things only for oneself. That is why one returns to the cave. That is why Morpheus and Trinity enter the Matrix, to bring Neo out. Do you understand? They are committed to bringing humanity out as well. Do you remember when Neo asks this? Why do my eyes hurt? And Morpheus replies, because you have never used them. The journey outside the cave has just begun. In fact, in the allegory of the cave, the eyes also hurt, because the sunlight wounds the eyes of the one who is used to darkness. You have never used your eyes. Do you know why? You do not truly look at things. You look at things through your selfishness. What use is this to me? What can I do with this? Everything is related to the interests of my small, selfish self. Only what serves me, what interests me. A selfish self is redundant, isn't it? But that's how it is. We look at things and do not see them for what they are. We see ourselves projected onto them, our world of illusion. That phrase from the Russian writer, Leo Tolstoy, who said that there are those who walk through a forest and see only firewood for their own fire. Do you know what that means? You only see what interests you. You have never truly seen the tree. You have never truly seen the plant. You have only seen your own interests. You are blind. Selfishness is a form of blindness. You do not see things as they are. You see your own interests projected onto things. When one steps out of this capsule of selfishness, one begins to use their eyes for the first time. He sees things as they are, not as he wants or wishes them to be, which is the selfish manipulation. Right? Then Morpheus has an idea. I'm going to take you to the oracle. We get really curious, don't we? What on earth could this oracle be? They create something that leaves us a bit surprised, don't they? An old lady in a kitchen. What on earth is this? What does this mean? Do you remember this part in the movie? Everyone has seen the movie, haven't you? And then Morpheus says, I will take you to the oracle to find out if you are the chosen one. There is some kind of prophecy that says a chosen one will come, the one who will break the Matrix's system and find the way out. Oracles. The origin of this word is the little mouth, the small exit, as if it were a tiny opening from the cave. That small tunnel of light that draws us inward. That little voice. There is even a very beautiful book called The Voice of the Silence. That little voice inside you, always asking, are you truly happy with this? Is this really what you wanted from your life? Is this all you wish to accomplish in the world? Who are you? Do you truly believe in this? That little voice within you, drawing you toward reflection, toward depth, guiding you toward your true identity. The small mouth, the luminous little exit that leads you out of the cave, out of the shadows. You will see that this origin of this tradition of the oracle, I don't mean the origin itself, but this name was used in Greece. There were several oracles through which the gods spoke to men. In the case, for example, of the oracle of Delphi, it was the god Apollo. In truth, the god was a symbol of your own inner divinity, your identity, your immortal essence, which was believed to reside within every human being. It was about establishing contact with something that is within you, something profound, eternal, which came into the world to experience life through you. As if your body were a glove, and there is a hand inside wanting to express itself. And this glove is not flexible, it is rigid. It does not allow your essence to manifest in the world. It prevents your manifestation. So, it is about establishing contact with your own essence. That is what the oracle does. In the film, Morpheus takes Neo to an apartment, or what seems like an apartment, where he says, open the door. I find this image on the film's website very interesting, because in the doorknob you can see not only Neo's reflection, but also his hand reaching for the doorknob. He must take the initiative. He has to go, turn the doorknob, and want to enter. He must seek knowledge. He must be pregnant with wisdom. He must take initiative. He must want to change. He must be willing to take risks. So he takes the initiative and goes to consult the oracle to ask if he is the chosen one. I am the one who will bring about change. I am the one who is awaited by the prophecy. And he enters, finding an apartment where, in the living room, there is a young monk dressed in garments resembling those of a Lamaist monk. It seems so, not quite the same color, but similar. And he manipulates objects, making a spoon dance and change shape. Do you remember that? A symbol of the child. In Egypt, you will see that if you look at the frieze from the Book of the Dead, the Papyrus of Ani, which depicts a man walking not after death, but a man journeying toward wisdom, there comes a certain moment when, as the man becomes wise, they place a small braid on him, which was the symbol of the child, as if he were being reborn, as if it were the birth into another dimension of consciousness. This child, certainly, is the symbol of the nascent wisdom within him, which has begun to master illusions. Something different is being born within him, a child, but he is already beginning to learn how to deal with illusions. Then he goes to the kitchen to speak with the oracle. What was the oracle? She was a priestess, an elderly woman, whom you would not immediately recognize as a priestess. You might think she was just a simple cook, wearing an apron and all. Standing by the oven, she offers him something to eat. I don't even know what it is, and there in the kitchen, she talks with him. If you study a bit of the tradition of medieval alchemy, for example, the alchemical furnace that transforms lead into gold, it must undergo a process of transmutation. That is why he is in the kitchen, beside the oven. And when he asks her, the Sibyl comes from Sibyl, which means doubtful, ambiguous. The priestesses of Delphi in Greece were also like this. They did not speak in a clear manner. They would present an enigma, and you had to decipher it. Then she says to him, look, you have the gift, but you are not the chosen one right now. Perhaps in the next life. What life? We will see that if we stop to collect, throughout history, phrases that speak about rebirth, there will be many, right? Truly I tell you, no one will enter the kingdom of heaven unless they are born again. Do you remember this? Jesus Christ to Nicodemus. Abandon your life if you wish to live. Tibetan tradition, the voice of the silence. It is in dying that we are born to eternal life. Saint Francis of Assisi. To die to a certain level of consciousness in order to be reborn into another. A new life, a different way of living, where you will see the world from another angle, from another body, from another dimension, where you would have to abandon your old life if you truly wish to live. It is in dying that we are born to eternal life. He had to be reborn. You will see this in the myth of King Arthur. His father, Uther, must be reborn as Arthur. It is the spell of transmutation. In order to reign in Camelot, he must ascend to another level of consciousness. In other words, you are not that now, but you can become it. You have potential. You will have to be reborn, that is, to inhabit another body. You will see the world from another dimension, and if you do this, it is possible, isn't it? You must undergo alchemy, what they call the athanor, the alchemical furnace of transmutation. So, perhaps in the next life. If you can reach a next life within this life, another level of consciousness, it is possible. And he succeeded. I find this character very interesting. Cypher. Cypher, you remember that he betrays the inhabitants of Zion, negotiates with the Matrix so he can return to the Matrix, knowing it was an illusion, but it was a pleasurable illusion. There were some pseudo-philosophers in ancient Greece called sophists who used to say, the truth is painful, do not seek the truth. The truth does not bring pleasure. The meaning of life is not truth, it is pleasure. And this man embodies exactly that. He is, in a way, the opposite of Neo. Neo seeks the truth, while he seeks pleasure, even if it is a lie. For him, it doesn't matter that the steak he's eating is an illusion. Does it bring pleasure? It's good. He says, put me back inside the Matrix. Give me a high-ranking position where I can have everything. I don't care if it's true or not. I want to enjoy it. In other words, he is someone who prefers illusion, like that popular saying, I don't know, I don't want to know, and I resent those who do. The truth doesn't matter. What matters is what brings pleasure. Meanwhile, Neo stands on the other side. These are the two polarities of humanity. The person who seeks the truth, regardless of whether it hurts, regardless of whether it causes suffering, regardless of whether it is uncomfortable, for him, what is most important is not what is pleasant. For him, what matters is what is true, right. And it is this person who will commit the betrayal and turn them in, adding a great deal of emotion to the story. Cypher comes from cipher. He was just one more, an extra. He has no identity. He is a cipher, just another number within the machine. He lacks his own identity. This phrase is also very beautiful. Once again, it is Morpheus teaching to him. You may remember there was a beggar at the station who sees Neo, and through his eyes, the agents of the Matrix see Neo. Then Morpheus explains, anyone who has not yet been freed is a potential agent of the Matrix. They are everyone and they are no one. You notice there are barcodes, right, on their heads. Anyone who is still asleep is an agent. They are the eyes and ears of the Matrix. In the Indian tradition, there is a sacred book called the Rig Veda, which says the following: father, brother, son, grandparents, uncles, anyone who has not been freed is a soldier of Maya. Maya was the goddess of illusion. Anyone who has not been freed is a soldier of Maya and will fight to keep you from being freed as well. Not out of malice, but because they believe that illusions are a form of security. Mediocrity that feels safe is preferable to the unknown. I want to protect you, so if you start to stray from what I know, I become afraid. I pull you back. There is a modern writer, a novelist, and historian named Stephen Pressfield, who says the following: there is a tacit agreement in favor of mediocrity. When one person reacts, the others feel betrayed. If you react, you disturb the people around you. I'll give the example from when you were a child, something I think almost everyone has experienced when no one in your class studied, but you did, and you got a good grade. And everyone got angry with you, because if everyone got a 0, the blame would fall on the teacher. But you got a grade. You proved it was possible to get a grade, and that they didn't get a grade because of mediocrity and complacency. So when you react, you expose the whole group, and in a certain way, people feel attacked and want to pull you back. So everyone becomes the eyes and ears of the system with the best of intentions. I don't know what you're doing, but it can't be good. So even if, say, a relative or a friend has lived a life in which they were not happy, they would rather have you repeat their life than venture into the unknown. Because you may be mediocre, but at least they know that. They know how to deal with it. Anything strange is outside of what they can control. So they pull people into a pattern of complacency where no one reacts, right? And everyone keeps watch over each other. This is Rig Veda. That's why I say that these young creators of this film knew something, because there are many symbolic references. Here is the first of the trials. You will see that Neo will go through 2 very difficult trials. This is the first one, when his master, Morpheus, is captured, who represents wisdom, the channel through which he attains wisdom, through his master, the traditional figure of the teacher. And this master is captured. He could save himself and leave the Matrix, or he could stay inside, risking everything, to save his master, even risking having to exchange his own life for his master's. A person only attains wisdom when they love it above all else. When someone loves their vanity or their comfort more than wisdom, they will not attain it. So Morpheus represents wisdom. He sacrifices everything to save wisdom. All his interests, selfishness, comforts. Secondly, wisdom above all. I love this. I don't want to leave this world the same size as when I entered it. I want to make a difference. I want to add to the world. And he does this. He sacrifices himself to save Morpheus. He manages to rescue his master from the prison of the Matrix agents. This is the first difficult trial he faces. Right? At this moment, I also find this phrase very interesting, very beautiful. Morpheus once again teaches him this. Sooner or later, you will realize, as I did, that there is a difference between knowing the path and walking the path. There is a 19th century philosopher, Helena Blavatsky, who says, honor the truths through practice. You may know everything, but if you do not live in coherence with that, you will not free yourself from the shadow. I know that the world is illusory. I quote the Vedic tradition, the Platonic tradition, but in life, I live immersed in selfishness, vanity, desires, mediocrity, and conformity. It is pointless. I am merely an intellectual. I am not someone who possesses true knowledge or wisdom. I only have it when, as I move through life, I take this knowledge into account. I only truly know by the way I move through life, not by what I theorize or by the intellectualism I possess. If I tell you that the best way out of this room is through the door, what do you expect from me? When the class ends, I should leave through the door. I am not going to throw a rope and try to climb out the window, because that would not be coherent. In other words, I will move through the world in a way that is coherent with what I believe. And if you want to know what a person truly believes, observe how they move through the world, not what they theorize. Do you understand this? Theories are sometimes beautiful, but when you look at how someone moves through the world, the choices they make, they are not consistent with those theories. That is not transformative, it is mere intellectualism. This is a kind of human Wikipedia. It accumulates information, but has no practical experience of it, right? So, it is about knowing the path and walking the path. You will not break free from the Matrix if you do not live in coherence with what you believe. This is also a very interesting teaching. And now comes the final test. I have brought here for you a passage from a sacred book of the Indian tradition, the Bhagavad Gita, one of the most significant works in world literature, truly beautiful, which portrays precisely this inner battle of humanity, as if it were an ancient Indian matrix, with the individual struggling against their own flaws. And there is a passage in which the master, Krishna, who is the Morpheus of this book, teaches his disciple, whose name was Arjuna. Arjuna was afraid to fight against his own flaws, afraid to destroy his defects. And then Krishna teaches him about death and says this phrase, Truly, O son of Kunti, there never was a time in the past, nor will there be in the present or the future, when you or any of these princes of the earth shall cease to exist. For what is eternal. That which truly exists eternally. What appears and disappears is but a shadow. Therefore, nothing can kill, nor truly be killed. That which is immortal. What was the proof that Neo experienced in relation to this? Forgiveness. All the people who entered the machine, into the matrix, knew that it was an illusion. The inhabitants of Zion, those from Morpheus's group, knew it was an illusion, but they had not yet managed to free themselves completely from that illusion. Because when the agents of the matrix shot at them inside the machine, they died outside. Do you remember that? They were physically outside, but they believed in that bullet so much that they died. Morpheus explains this to him. In fact, the explanation he gives is very much in line with the Kybalion. The universe is mental. You create reality on the mental plane. You believe that someone shot you. And even though your body isn't even there, you die here. Because you still believe in it. You're still trapped in this game of illusions. And then, at a certain point, in a final scene, Neo faces an agent of the Matrix, and in a fierce fight, at a certain moment, this agent grabs him and shoots him multiple times. What was expected to happen? Everyone gathers around him, out there, on the ship, right? Waiting, he died. But he doesn't believe that he can be killed inside the Matrix, where he wasn't even physically present. He doesn't believe that the Matrix has the power to bring about his death. He remembers the fundamental reality. My essence is not here. What is here is only a shadow. Therefore, this death is not real. He manages to believe in this. So the people in the Matrix shoot at him. He falls and gets up again, unharmed. And he keeps walking after the guy. And everyone is left astonished on Morpheus's spaceship. Hell! He took seriously what he knew. He honored the truth through his actions. If I'm not even here, how could anyone kill me here if my body is over there? What is here is only a shadow. He believes in this and becomes immortal. When we shoot at him and do not kill him, in other words, he completely overcomes the greatest of illusions, which is the illusion of death. He knows that what he is cannot be killed in that world, because he is not even from that world. And he overcomes death and manages to subdue the agent of the Matrix like this. He becomes immortal. No one can do anything to him anymore, because he truly embraces the idea that he was never really there. That place was merely a shadow, right? This confirms Morpheus's prediction that he was indeed the chosen one. He was the one who came to break the final illusion, which is the illusion of mortality. If mortality does not exist, if he has conquered death, he is eternal. He overcame death within the world of illusions, within the Matrix. And after that, do you remember what he does? After he subdues Agent Smith from the Matrix, he ascends. He takes flight. This represents the idea of ascension. All those who become enlightened, who are wise. Ascension is a symbol of the elevation of consciousness. He takes flight, he ascends, he moves on to another plane. And this is the confirmation of his true nature. He was the chosen one. He overcame the illusions of the material world. And because he overcame them, he now proves that this is possible, and others can do it as well. To overcome even the most difficult of illusions, which is the illusion of death, he ascends, as they say, the ascension of the glorious body. He rises above the illusions of the material world. He conquers ignorance. He attains immortality. This is so ancient, my friends, that it is present everywhere, in every tradition. It is, by its very nature, a mythical argument. They play with names, they play with scenes, they play with situations, and they carry a message. Take seriously the idea that the material world is an illusion. Take your own immortality seriously. If you take this seriously, you are able to impose it over the shadows and transcend this world without letting it subdue you. This can be done. This is a message present in the traditions of Egypt, India, Greece, and Rome. Wherever you go, even among the Celts, this message exists. The transcendence of who we are. the possibility of overcoming the world of illusions, the possibility of overcoming life as a temporary phenomenon, the ephemeral, and reaching eternity, which is the greatest of human aspirations. To reach eternity, to conquer death, to overcome the ephemeral, right? And he conquers this through a conviction, through a certainty: I am not here. It is only a shadow that is here. Well, this is basically what I had to share with you. As I mentioned, just a few points. I hope you have the opportunity to watch this film again and observe everything is done very intentionally, very coherently. Everything is carefully thought out to truly symbolize the relationship between humanity and the real world, and it is based on various philosophical traditions. I find it a loss that, in our historical moment, so few people are familiar with philosophy and grasp so little from this film. Leaving this film, it is good entertainment, but what is truly learned? And so many others. Sometimes there are things to teach us. Books, films, things pass around us, and life itself passes by, and we fail to grasp anything of what it is trying to tell us. This bridge between the illusory world and the symbolism that lies behind the scenes has always been the pursuit of philosophy, which is what we do at New Acropolis. The quest to transcend appearances and to understand more deeply our own identity and the hidden meaning of life, the truth. What is it, truly, that brought us here? What is expected of us as human beings? What is the human ideal? Isn't it? Well, that's it. And now I open the floor for questions, if you have any doubts or anything you would like to clarify.